Hare Krishna. Morning, dear devotees. So glories to Srila Prabhupada. This morning, I'm going to do a little reading before we begin our japa session. It is the appearance day of Sri Advaita Acharya, and I thought it would be appropriate to read a little bit from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we'll read a little bit also from Chaitanya Bhagavat to help us understand who is Advaita Acharya, and also to read a little bit about why he induced the Lord to appear as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to deliver the fallen souls in Kali Yuga. That section I will be reading from Chaitanya Bhagavat, and which is, of course, the well-known pastime of Advaita Acharya, offering water and Ganges water and Tulsi and worshipping the Lord, begging him to please descend because of his observation of the very fallen state of affairs. But first I wanted to read one verse which I oftentimes quote from the Adi Lila, chapter 7. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Jaya Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Panchatattva Ekavastu Nahi Kichu Veda Rasa Asvadite Tabu Vibhida Vibheda. Spiritually, there are no differences between these five tattvas. For on the transcendental platform, everything is absolute. Yet there are also varieties in the spiritual world. And in order to taste these spiritual varieties, one should distinguish between them. Om Jnana Timirandasya Garanjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhangam Langayate Gurim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurundina Taranam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sanyavari Paskacha Satarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sri Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I wanted to begin with this verse, although we'll be, as I said, we'll be reading from Adi Lila, chapter 6, about the Advaita Acharya. I can't remember, I think it was either last week or the week before, when I was speaking about our distribution of Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, book distribution. I was speaking about our first Prabhupada marathon, at least my first Prabhupada marathon in 1973. And the only books we had available for distribution during that marathon was a book that BBT had published called Lord Chaitanya in 5 Features, which was chapter 7, Adi Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the cover of the book was a picture of Lord Chaitanya sitting before Prakashananda Saraswati with holding his danda. And right in the very beginning of the book, this is text 5 of chapter 7, this verse which I just read. Here, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is explaining who is the Panchatattva. Very, very elevated subject matter, trying to understand how is it that the Lord appears in 5 features simultaneously. And not only how the Lord appears in these 5 features, but ultimately on the transcendental platform, there's no difference between these five features. Yet there are also varieties in the spiritual worlds, and one has to distinguish between these different features in order to taste these spiritual varieties. There's a very, very elevated subject matter for people to understand being introduced to Krishna consciousness. Because, as we know, the Western world was so filled with impersonalism and voidism, which is one of the purposes that Srila Prabhupada appeared in the West in order to dissipate the darkness of this ignorance. On one hand, everything is one, and because on the transcendental platform, everything is absolute. And the impersonalists and voidists, they try to emphasize this feature of the Supreme Lord, that ultimately on the absolute platform, everything is one. But the devotees understand that the Lord appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, the simultaneous oneness and difference. Because without understanding the difference, without distinguishing between these different aspects of the Supreme Lord, there's no way that one can actually taste devotional service. We understand that the spiritual world is filled with unlimited varieties. And these unlimited varieties are experienced through different types of tastes. And both the Supreme Lord and his devotees, they experience this taste by devotion. If there's no distinction between the Supreme Lord as everything is one, then how can there be devotion? Yet the impersonalists, they try to speak on these topics and present them according to their own conclusions. And just like the famous story, of course, which we know is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya was listening to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya explain Vedanta. And when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was seeing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting before him and wasn't saying anything after 7 days, he's trying to, can you say something, please? I've been speaking all this time, and you've not said anything. And Lord Chaitanya told him, yes, I've been listening to what you have had to say, but I haven't listened to how you've clouded the actual essential meaning of Vedanta with your interpretations. Because that's what the impersonalists do. They already established their conclusion. And therefore, when they study Shastra and read Shastra, they already have their conclusion and they present it by clouding the actual essential meaning of the verses of Shastra with their own interpretations of Shastra. But the devotees understand the simultaneous oneness and difference. Excuse me, I've been a little bit sick. So here, right in the very beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita in chapter 7, verse number 5, Kaviraj Goswami is speaking how the Lord is simultaneously one and different. There are 5 tattvas, or truths, that exist on the transcendental platform, and they are all absolute. But because on the spiritual platform there is unlimited varieties, one has to distinguish in order to taste. And in order to taste, one has to see that loving exchanges is the actual taste. But how could they be loving exchanges if everything is only one and everyone is only ultimately one? Therefore, the Supreme Lord appears in order to taste. And by relishing that taste, he distributes. Therefore, the next verse is a very well-known verse, Pancha Tatatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Let me offer my obeisances unto Lord Shri Krishna, who has manifested himself in 5 as a devotee, expansion of a devotee, incarnation of a devotee, pure devotee, and devotional energy. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that Lord Nityananda is the immediate expansion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his brother. Lord Chaitanya is called Bhakta Rupa, or the form of a devotee. And Nityananda Prabhu is called Bhakta Swarupa, the expansion of a devotee. Sri Advaita Prabhu is the incarnation of a devotee. He is Vishnu Tattva and belongs to the same category. And then there's the pure devotee and the devotional energy. The pure devotee, we understand to be Srivas Thakur, and devotional energy we understand to be Gadadhar. So I just wanted to start with these two verses. We will begin reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 6, text 4. I'm not going to read the Bengali, I'll just read the translation, and if necessary, I will speak a little bit about it. Since today is the appearance of Advaita Rachaya, and he is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, and therefore he is described as the incarnation, incarnation of a devotee.
Incarnation
and Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic world through the actions of Maya. Because he is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he is called Advaita, means non-dual. And because he propagates the cult of devotion, he is called Acharya. He is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee. And this is reading from text 5. Therefore, I take shelter of him. So he is both the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee, as I have already explained, how one has to distinguish between them, even though they're simultaneously on the absolute platform. There's no difference. And therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying, I take shelter of him. Text number 6. Sri Advaita Acharya is indeed directly the Supreme Personality of God in himself. His glory is beyond the conception of ordinary living beings. I'm going to read the Bengali. It's nice. Text 7. Mahavishnu Shishti Karena Jagaradhikarya Tandra Avatarda Sakshat Advaita Acharya. Mahavishnu performs all the functions for the creation of the universe. Sri Advaita Acharya is his direct incarnation. If anyone is wondering, who is this Advaita Acharya? Here this verse is specifically stating that he is an incarnation of Mahavishnu. Ye Purusha Shishti Sthiti Karena Mayaya Ananta Brahmanda Shishti Karena Lilaya. That Purusha creates and maintains with his external energy. He creates innumerable universes in his pastimes. Ichchaya Ananta Murti Karena Prakasa Eka Murte Karena Brahmande Pravesha. By his will, he manifests himself in unlimited forms in which he enters each and every universe. This is explaining how from Mahavishnu, he manifests himself, further expands as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and enters each and every universe. First, he creates innumerable universes as Mahavishnu. He emanates all the universes from the pores of his body. And then, as this verse explains, he enters into each and every universe in unlimited forms. Just as there are unlimited universes, there are unlimited forms of the Lord which expand into each universe. Of course, as we know, this is also another inconceivable aspect of the Supreme Lord. That how is it that he expands unlimitedly? As we know, the Lord expands, but he himself always remains one. He doesn't become anything less, even though unlimited potencies are manifested from him, and the unlimited universes are manifested from his transcendental body, still he remains complete. Om Purnam Adaha Purnamidam Purnam Udachyate is this verse we often quote from Ishopanishad. Prabhupada used to give the example that, let me try one of these. Transcendental mathematics, 1 minus 1 equals 1. So Krishna manifests by his will, Mahavishnu manifests himself in unlimited forms and enters into every universe. Se Purushera Angsa Advaita Nahi Kichubeda Sharira Vishesha Tandra Nahika Vichcheda. Sri Advaita Acharya is a plenary part of that Purusha, and so is not different from him. Indeed, Sri Advaita Acharya is not separate, but is another form of that Purusha. Sahaya Karena Tarna Laya Padhana Koti Brahmanda Karena Ichchaya Nirmana. He, Advaita Acharya, helps in the pastimes of the Purusha, with whose material energy and by whose will he creates innumerable universes. So we understand that one of the pastimes of the Lord, of course, one, unlimited pastimes of the Lord, but one of the pastimes of the Lord as described here is the pastimes of the Purusha. And Advaita Acharya serves the Lord in this pastime. It's the pastime of creation, and by whose will he creates innumerable universes. Text 12, Jagat Mangala Advaita Mangala Guna Dhama Mangala Charitra Sada Mangala Yanra Nama. Being a reservoir of all auspicious attributes, Sri Advaita Acharya is all auspicious for the world. His characteristics, activities, and name are always auspicious. Koti Angsa Koti Shakti Koti Avatara Eta Laya Shije Purusha Sakala Sangsara. Mahavishnu creates the entire material world with millions of his parts, energies, and incarnations. Maya Yaiche Dui Angsa Nimitta Upadan Maya Nimitta Hetu Upadan Pradhan Purusha Ishvara Aiche Dvimurti Haya Vishwa Shishti Kare Nimitta Upadana Laya. Just as the external energy consists of two parts, the efficient cause and the material cause, Maya being the efficient cause and Pradhan the material cause, so Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, assumes two forms to create the material world with the efficient and material causes. Anyway, these verses will go on to explain the position of Advaita Acharya in relationship to the incarnation of Mahavishnu. And it explains, the verses explain how Advaita Acharya is considered to be the limb of the Supreme Lord. And he's quoting a verse that states that the limbs and the plenary portions of the Lord are all spiritual. They have no relationship with the material energy. Why has Advaita been called a limb and not a part? And the reason is that the word limb implies that there's greater intimacy. And Advaita is the reservoir of virtues and is the main limb of Mahavishnu. And he descended to introduce the path of bhakti. Now, because time is passing, I wanted to read a little bit from Chaitanya Bhagavat. And this is from Adi Kanda, text number 78. As we all know, Advaita Acharya, he descended to this world prior to the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is described that another name for Advaita is Kamalaksha, lotus-eyed. And when he appeared in this world, he appeared and was known as Kamalaksha. And he was, as we said, he was residing in Navadvip, and he was known as the topmost Vaishnava at that time, before the Lord appeared. And he was glorified throughout the world. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, in his commentary, says that even in that society of such materialistic persons, Advaita Acharya was glorified and worshipped by everyone. And he was accepted as the spokesman for the Vaishnavas. Because as what is described a little bit before this, in this chapter of Chaitanya Bhagavat, is how materialistic society was during that time when Advaita Acharya had manifested himself in this world. People were inclined to the worship of goddess Durga because they're interested in wealth. It's also described that people would gather in large gatherings, but their primary purpose for assembling large gatherings is for weddings and birthdays. They were not interested for assembling large gatherings for glorification of the Supreme Lord. And there were so many other signs and symptoms which the Vaishnavas had observed, who had appeared before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had appeared. And Chaitanya Bhagavat is also described how the Lord arranged for different Vaishnavas to appear in different places throughout Bengal. And although those places were known to be very impure places, because the Vaishnavas appeared there, the intention of the Lord was to have the Vaishnavas appear there simply to purify those places. And then gradually, Advaita Acharya, who had also appeared before the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he became known as the topmost Vaishnava at that time and was glorified by all the Vaishnavas. And these Vaishnavas assembled in Navadvip. And in Chaitanya Bhagavat, there are many descriptions of how the Vaishnavas would come together and they would observe what was taking place amongst the materialistic people. And they would lament because they found themselves to be very ineffective in transforming the consciousness of the materialists. So this is the setting, which is actually, I'm just very, very simple setting background to help us understand about Advaita Acharya and how he was known as the topmost Vaishnava and how he was glorified throughout the world by other Vaishnavas. Advaita Acharya was the most respected teacher. That is why, as we've read before in Chaitanya Charitamrita, because he's teaching the science of devotion. Therefore, he is known as Acharya. He was as expert as Lord Shiva in explaining devotional service of Lord Krishna. And he explained it with knowledge and renunciation. He explained all the scriptures that are found in the three worlds. And he concluded that devotional service to the lotus feet of Krishna is the essence of all teachings. Of course, I'm going ahead a little bit, but we understand that one of the pastimes of Advaita Acharya and Lord Chaitanya was when Advaita Acharya was having a great difficulty being offered respect by the Lord. And therefore, it's described here that he explained all the scriptures, and his explanations were always glorifying devotional service to the lotus feet of Krishna. But Lord Chaitanya would offer him respect because Advaita Acharya was a godbrother of Ishwara Puri, who was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya always used to treat Advaita Acharya with the greatest respect, because Ishwara Puri was Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. But Advaita Acharya was always thinking, how can he treat me like this? Because I'm a servant. How can the servant be treated as superior? So he wanted to establish himself and to be recognized as Lord Chaitanya's servant. So he began thinking the only way I could be recognized as Lord Chaitanya's servant is if he chastises me. And he understood the only way that he could create this wrath in the Lord so that the Lord would chastise him would be by preaching impersonal philosophy. So even though here it is described that he was glorifying devotional service to Lord Krishna as the essence of all the teachings of the scriptures. One time Advaita Acharya began describing Yoga Vishishta philosophy, and he began expounding upon impersonal philosophy, saying it is the highest. And he was thinking, yes, this will bring my master before me. And it will show everyone how I am his servant when he chastises me for speaking this way. Of course, at that particular time, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they were swimming down the Ganga, and they understood they were going to Advaita Acharya. And Lord Chaitanya then appeared, and he came before Advaita Acharya, and he grabbed him. And while Advaita Acharya was espousing this philosophy from his mouth, Lord Chaitanya grabbed him and pulled him off his feet. And Advaita Acharya's wife, she was saying, please stop, he's an old man. What are you doing, pulling him in that way? And Advaita Acharya was relishing that moment, being taken by the Lord, being chastised for his expressions of impersonal philosophy. Of course, that's another detailed pastime of the relationship that exists between the Lord and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotee Advaita, who thinks himself always to be a servant of the Lord. Even though they are ekavastu. On the transcendental platform, everything is absolute. But in order to taste varieties in the spiritual world, one has to distinguish between them. And although Advaita is non-different, the Supreme Lord, he's always in the mood of servant. This is the position. Also, just as Nityananda also relishes this mood. I'm always a servant of the Lord. So the servant Advaita found it very, very difficult for receiving so much respect from his worshipful master. Therefore, the Lord and his devotee relished this particular relationship and pastime. But here we're describing how Advaita is propounding the scriptures in relationship to devotional service to the lotus feet of Krishna. And Advaita Acharya would enthusiastically worship Krishna with Tulsi manjaris and Ganges water. He was calling for Krishna in great spiritual ecstasy. And that sound vibration pierced the covering of the universe and was heard in the Vaikuntha planets. And on hearing Advaita Prabhu's cries of love, Krishna personally appeared, for he is controlled by the love of his devotees. Just see such a relationship that exists. Relationship is based on love. And how can one experience love unless there's distinction between the lover and the beloved? And the Lord is controlled by the love of his devotees. He's controlled by the love of Advaita. And therefore the Lord was inclined to personally appear by Advaita's loud crying, which was piercing the universe and entering into the spiritual world. Therefore, Advaita Acharya is the best of all Vaishnavas. And in this way, he resided in Nadia, and he was in great distress due to people's lack of devotion. Everyone in the world was engaged in materialistic activities. No one was engaged in worshiping or serving Krishna. As we said, everyone in Navadvip at that time, they were absorbed in sense gratification. They didn't have any taste for constantly serving Lord Krishna with their senses. Their tastes were so perverted that they were interested only in worldly activities. Some people worshipped Vasuli or Chandi or Durga with various ingredients, and some people worship the yakshas with meat and wine. They would constantly dance, sing, and play musical instruments in a great commotion, but they never heard the supremely auspicious names of Krishna. And the devotees, as we said before, the devotees who had assembled there in Navadvip, these devotees headed by Advaita Acharya were distressed on seeing the people engaged in so-called auspicious activities that had no relationship to Krishna whatsoever. So that was their observation, and that was their distress, because the Vaishnavas by nature is full of compassion. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasinduevacha, Patitanam Pavaniro Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. That is the heart of a Vaishnava. Vaishnava sees others engaged in materialistic activities and they feel compassion for them. Yet they felt themselves to be completely ineffective in being able to transform the hearts of these materialistic people. Of course, as we understand, this is all a pastime, because ultimately the purpose was to induce the appearance of the Lord to come. Of course, we understand from the introductory chapters of Chaitanya Charitamrita that the external reason for the appearance of Lord Chaitanya was to answer the call of Advaita Acharya and to propagate the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. But he also had his internal reasons for appearing, for tasting the love of the Lord himself. That was experienced by the greatest devotee of the Lord, Srimati Radharani. Therefore, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami gives both the internal and external reasons for the Lord's appearance. So Advaita Acharya, he was feeling so much compassion, and he was mercifully contemplating how to deliver these living entities. And he was thinking, if my Lord descends, then all these fallen souls will be delivered. My name, Advaita Singha, will be justified when I cause the descent of the beloved Lord of Vaikuntha. I will make the Lord of Vaikuntha appear in this world, and we will dance, chant, and thus deliver the fallen living entities. These materialistic living beings, they already had a propensity for dancing and singing. They already had a propensity for becoming intoxicated. So Advaita Acharya, born of his compassion for all these living entities, he was thinking, I will induce the Lord of Vaikuntha to appear. And by his appearance, he will dovetail the propensities of these materialists for singing and dancing. And in this way, all living entities, the fallen living entities, will be delivered. So with this determination, Advaita Acharya constantly served the lotus feet of Sri Krishna Chandra with a fixed mind. And then the next verse says that Lord Chaitanya repeatedly confirmed and incarnated due to the desire of Advaita Acharya Prabhu. We'll read just a few more verses and then we'll begin our japa together. I wanted to read a verse where Advaita Acharya described his determination to induce the Lord to appear. And this was at a time when they were chanting and dancing was taking place in Srivas Pandit's house. I'm going a little bit ahead because I wanted to read. And I'm on text 103. I don't know if you're following me.
Yeah. Yes.
You are? The hearts of these devotees burned on seeing the people of the world devoid of devotion to Lord Vishnu. And because they could not find anyone interested in hearing topics of Lord Krishna, they would engage in kirtan by themselves. They would remain together for a couple of hours in the house of Advaita Prabhu and mitigate their distress with topics of Krishna. The devotees felt that the entire world was burning, and they felt sorry because they could not find anyone to speak with. Advaita Acharya along with other Vaishnavas, tried to preach to the people, but they could not understand anything. In distress, Advaita Acharya began to fast, and the Vaishnavas sighed deeply. People did not know why the devotees danced for Krishna or chanted his names. They could not understand who was a Vaishnava or what the purpose of Sankirtan was. People could not understand any of these things because their hearts were filled with desires for wealth and children. All the atheists would laugh at the Vaishnava. Every evening, Srivas Pandit and his brothers would loudly chant the names of Hari in their house. On hearing this chanting, the atheists would remark, "What madness! This Brahmin Srivas will ruin this village. The Mohammedan king is very cruel by nature. If he hears about this kirtan, the whole district will suffer." And someone else said that, "I'll drive this Brahmin out of town. I'll break his house and throw it in the Ganges. If we get rid of this Brahmin, then it will be good for the village. Otherwise, the Yavanas will take over the town." Hearing the atheists speak in this way, the devotees began to cry and chant Krishna's name. When Advaita Acharya heard these things, he became as angry as fire. Neglecting whether he was dressed properly, he spoke to all the Vaishnavas. "Listen, Srivas, Gangadas, and Shuklambara. I will make Krishna descend for all to see. He will personally come and deliver one and all by preaching devotional service with your help. If I fail to do this, then I will manifest 4 arms and take up my disc. I will sever the heads of the atheists. And then it will be confirmed that Krishna is my Lord and I am his servant." Such was the determination of Advaita Acharya to induce his Lord to appear to deliver these fallen souls. So determined that he said, "I will manifest this form, my 4-arm form. I will invoke the chakra and I will sever the heads of the atheists. And then it will be confirmed that Krishna is my Lord and I am his servant." Of course, someone may say, such drastic means to invoke his chakra and sever the heads of all the atheists. But that was his determination, because he knew that he could induce the Lord to appear. He knew the power of devotional service, and he knew the Lord would certainly appear before him to fulfill his desire. But he manifested such determination in this way to induce the Lord to appear. Because we know that Lord Chaitanya appeared not to kill the demons, but to kill the demoniac mentality. Even when Lord Chaitanya invoked his chakra to kill Jagai and Madhai, the chakra was not required because of the mercy of Nityananda. Nityananda was so merciful and so compassionate that he was begging Lord Chaitanya to please forgive these two. Again, by the desire of Lord Nityananda, even though Lord Chaitanya invoked his chakra to kill him, it was rendered useless by the power of his devotee. So in this way, Advaita Acharya worshipped the lotus feet of Krishna with great determination. The other devotees also shed tears, as they all constantly worshiped Krishna with fixed determination. So this is the pastime of Advaita Acharya, inducing the Lord to appear by worshiping the Lord with Ganges water and Tulsi, worshiping Shalagam, and manifesting such determination and desire to invoke the Lord to appear in this world to deliver all the fallen souls. So this is a little bit about Advaita Acharya. There's so much more we could speak about, but we want to spend some time chanting this morning also. There are many other wonderful pastimes, both Chaitanya Charitamrita and in Chaitanya Bhagavat. How when the Lord appeared And then he was manifesting his different pastimes. And Advaita wanted to be sure that it was actually his worshipful Lord. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya sent out, I think it was Srivas Pandit, to go and tell Advaita to come here. I want him to see my pastimes. He should know that the Lord, who he called, has appeared now. But Advaita, within his heart, he was testing. He wanted to be sure it was the Lord. So although, is he the Srivas, or it might have been Ramai Pandit, who came before Advaita Acharya.
तो
And asked him,
Srivas
the
तो
Lord is
रमाई
calling
पंडित.
you. And Advaita Acharya said, I want to see that he is my worshipful Lord. If he calls me and knows where I am, and then if he not only calls me and knows where I am, but if he places his lotus foot on my head, then I will accept that he is my worshipful Lord. So Advaita Acharya began gathering all the different ingredients for worshiping the Lord. And he went and he hid. And then Lord Chaitanya, who was in the middle of the pastime, told him where he was. He said, go tell him, I am calling him now to come here and come. He should offer his worship. And he knew exactly where Advaita Acharya was hiding. Tell him to come. And Advaita Acharya came with all the paraphernalia for worship, and he began worshiping the Lord, and then the Lord placed his lotus foot on his head. These and so many other pastimes are described by Vrindavan Das Thakur and Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. And if you like, you can read some of them today. Also in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, so we'll begin chanting. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Thank you, dear devotees, for participating this morning. And we hope you will remember the mercy of Sri Advaita Acharya on the auspicious day of his appearance. It was due to his intense determination and prayer that Lord Chaitanya appeared to distribute this most ecstatic holy name of the Lord and ecstatic love of God. We should pray for his mercy today, that someday we may hopefully realize the great fortune that we've had in coming in contact with Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. When we realize how fortunate we are, then we'll really understand what Lord Chaitanya has come to give. And that great fortune is, of course, has been given to us by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, who told us that now that you have become fortunate, we should make others fortunate also. Of course, we may not be fully compassionate. We may not fully realize how fortunate we are. That will manifest in time. And just as an unripe fruit in due course of time will become ripe. Or as example is given as an unripe mango, in due course of time will become very sweet in form of a ripe mango. But by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, and by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and by the mercy of Sri Advaita Acharya, who invoked his presence, we have been given this opportunity. Let us continue to become ripe by chanting and hearing and glorifying the holy name of the Lord. So the natural sweet taste will manifest in our tongue. Srila Rupa Goswami has explained in the Upadeshamrita that the glories of the Supreme, glories of the pastimes, the name, form, and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are very naturally sweet, just like sugar is naturally sweet. But one who's been afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, he cannot taste that sweet taste. Therefore, if one very carefully and attentively chants this name, then this natural taste will awaken on the tongue as one becomes cured from this disease. So Lord Chaitanya came to give this. Therefore, by continuing chanting and glorifying his pastimes, we will also be able to understand fully and realize how fortunate we are to have been given this opportunity. So we'll continue our classes. Hopefully someday during the week, I'll be able to have a japa session. I can't say for sure that I'll be able to do it, but next Sunday, I should definitely be able to have another japa session and class. But we'll try to do it again also sometime during the week. And please wait for the announcements to come and look for the announcements on the website. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Hare Krishna Hare